Hello and welcome to PCM's Webinar Wednesday. We are thrilled to have you with us today for our Veeam webinar, Leveraging Hybrid Cloud to Improve Availability with Veeam. Joining us today is Chris Handley. We're going to get right into our main presentation in just a few minutes, but I have a few housekeeping items. Please enter your questions in the question box on the right-hand side and I'll relay those to our speaker this morning at the end of the presentation. We do send out a survey at the end of the webinar. Please fill it out and let us know how we did, as well as topics you'd like to see covered in our future webinars. You should see that survey in your inbox later today. Speaking of future webinars, please be sure to check out our weekly webinar schedule on our website at www.pcm.com/webinars/archives. We are recording this webinar, which will be available for playback in a few days. Recordings are posted to our webinars page along with our upcoming webinar schedule. There you can find previous webinar recordings. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our main presentation today. And we'll be handing it off to our speaker, Chris Handley.
Thank you and welcome to all of you. So when we talk about this particular topic, I want to spend some time with you and really kind of dive deep, I suppose, as well as cover a fair amount of territory if we can. When we think about the idea of leveraging hybrid cloud to improve availability with Veeam, we really have to go back to the past a little bit. We have to talk a little bit about technologies that have emerged in the past. We also need to talk about some technologies that are emerging in the present, and maybe look a little bit toward the future. Hopefully by the time we're done, you have a good idea not only what opportunities exist in the hybrid cloud from Veeam, but also a broader approach to availability in a private cloud on-premises environment, a public cloud environment, and maybe some idea of what we might do in a managed cloud or managed services style environment as well. As you heard, if you have questions, please ask them. I will monitor the question and answer pane. Some of the questions I may even take during the course of the session today. Of course, I'll save time at the end for us to talk about questions there as well. When we talk about this idea of public and private cloud, you have to know that from a role perspective, my role at Veeam is to manage our alliance with Microsoft. I work on a team with some other alliances managers. We manage that relationship around the world. Because of that, my expertise comes from that Veeam and Microsoft community. Please note, we're going to talk about how some of these Veeam and Microsoft technologies work together in a hybrid cloud environment, but those technologies extend beyond just Veeam and Microsoft Azure into the realm of things like AWS, Glacier, other public cloud providers and offerings. So we'll talk today about Veeam, Microsoft, hybrid cloud environments. By the time we're done, you should have a pretty good, solid understanding of Veeam and where we fit into the marketplace and what kind of things we offer to that marketplace. Everyone asks first thing, how do you say it? And it's Veeam, and it rhymes with team. The name does not have a specific meaning associated with virtual machines, although that is where our business began. It's just Veeam, and it rhymes with team. Where are we today? Veeam is about 10 years old. Our first product release was actually back in 2007. So we have seen our customer base grow from 0 to just over a quarter of a million customers, 255,000. We do business in 180 countries around the world, and we do our business strategically through our partners. We have about 50,000 of them. Veeam has been very, very fortunate. Our products are very good. They kind of help to sell themselves. Our customers love what our products do. We'll talk about some of those details in just a moment. Things that are important to you and I. Veeam has a really strong, what's called the Net Promoter Score. We measure how customers feel about the providers of their products, and Veeam's at a plus 73. We lead our industry in Net Promoter Score. Our customers love our products. They love what we do. And as a consequence, you see 74% of the Fortune 500 companies we count as our customers, 57% of the Global 2000, and our revenue bookings continue to grow on a annual basis. When we think about Veeam, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking to you about how good Veeam is from a customer satisfaction perspective or how good we are in terms of sales. Those things are important, but they're really just indicators about the products. And so when I look at satisfaction scores, this is exactly what I expect. I like to see customer satisfaction in the 9 out of 10 range. That tells me I'm doing things right. And so when we talk today about technology and innovation, please know that those technologies and innovations are really what's driving our business, our sales, our customer satisfaction, our net promoter score. They're really all coming from the products. So let's spend just a few minutes and talk about some innovations. I've highlighted some of the key innovations that have occurred in our products over the past decade. One of the big keys, and it happened right up front, the ability to do something called instant file level recovery. And the idea here is very simple. We know when we start talking about availability, about protecting data, our customers early on back in 2007, 2008 timeframe wanted to protect virtual machines that were running in a VMware environment. And Veeam was very good at creating the backups and then doing very fast recovery. We started with instant file level recovery, which gave the customer the ability to recover individual files out of a backup without interrupting the operation of the virtual machines or the workloads, and then as fast as they could click the buttons, have those files returned to their workload environment. We started there and we simply continued. We added in our version 5 product something called Instant VM Recovery, which is actually based on a patented operation that Veeam does, which allows a customer to do whole virtual machine recovery and do it in a very short time frame. So for example, industry standard even today for recovering large Microsoft workloads like Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, Active Directory, those workloads generally are recovered somewhere in the 3 to 5 hour range, with 4 being a good standard. When you talk about Veeam, our customers will use instant VM recovery and recover those same workloads in less than 2 minutes. And so it really has become a game-changing operation. That's been out in the market now for about 6 years. The market's adopted that and loves that capability, that feature. With version 6, we started offering capabilities for Hyper-V and extended beyond just a single hypervisor platform. As we move into, let's go version 8, somewhere in that time frame, we started to extend capabilities for physical machines. And so customers can now back up not just virtual machines, but physical machines as well. We added cool things like capabilities in version 9 for scale-out backup repositories, BitLocker. We added capabilities for things called Veeam Explorers, and those were actually added back in, I guess version 6.5 and version 7. The Veeam Explorers allow us to go in and get access to content inside of backup files of databases. So if you have a backup of an Exchange database, for example, you can use the Veeam Explorer for Exchange, go into the backup, into the Exchange database, and at a very granular level find individual items and recover them. Now, what's happening here as I talk to you about all of these innovations and the way that they operate, we have changed the way that our customers think about a traditional process. We used to call our products Veeam Backup and Replication because that's what they did. They backed up an environment and they replicated it. Now we call it something different. We call it Veeam Availability Suite. And the idea is that we're no longer simply concerned with making copies of data like we did, say, 10 years ago. We've really moved on from that to an area where now we expect our customers will have access to their data anywhere, at any time, under any circumstances, on any device. And those ideas have really driven what we now call availability. We continue to work with key partners in the storage and in the cloud industries to build better functionality for customers. Veeam, remember, is only software, so there's going to be some form of hardware on the back end, and we remain hardware agnostic so that our customers can pick and choose exactly what it is that they want out of their hardware, and then Veeam comes and we build integration components to make that hardware work just as good as it possibly can with the Veeam environment. Now, instead of calling it the Veeam environment, let's actually address it with what it really is. It's called the Veeam Availability Platform. Now, we have about 45 minutes today to talk about availability in a hybrid cloud environment, and so I want to start going a little bit deeper on that topic here. You can see from what's on your screen, this is called the Veeam Availability Platform, that from a availability perspective, we're really looking at Veeam not just as a piece of software to back up data on premises. Instead, we look at Veeam Availability Suite as kind of an anchoring piece of software that will operate on premises, but build linkages out to managed cloud through Veeam Cloud and Service Providers. Will obviously work on premises with our VMware and our Hyper-V environments, or with our physical environments. I didn't put the physical on there, but it works equally as well with physical or with virtual machines. Works in a software as a service environment or in a traditional public cloud environment. Now, when we think availability, we can't simply select one of those and say, Veeam is great on premises. We have to be able to say, hey, Veeam is great on premises. We're great in the managed cloud. We're great in a software as a service application in the public arena, and we're great in a public arena like Microsoft Azure, where you're looking to do archives, long-term storage, migration scenarios. Veeam has to work well in all of those environments. And so when we talk to you today about leveraging hybrid cloud to improve availability, really what we're talking about is what's on this slide. We're talking about a customer's capabilities to take the data that they're working with, regardless of where, when, how, on what device, and being able to provide available access to that data under any circumstances. So when we think about Veeam, and we think about leveraging hybrid cloud to improve availability with Veeam, I want to throw out some scenarios to you. I want to get you used to some of the ideas that are associated with this hybrid cloud and availability concept. And hopefully by the time we're done, you have a good idea of what we mean when we say leveraging hybrid cloud to improve availability with Veeam. First thing I want to talk to you about is something called the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3-2-1 rule is something that is not new. It's been around in our industry for decades. The 3-2-1 rule simply says that you always keep at least 3 copies of your data. You always have at least 2 different media types that will store those copies of data, and you always keep one of those in an offsite location. Now, when we think about the 3-2-1 rule, we can see that the 3-2-1 rule was established in an on-premises or a private cloud world, right? The 3 different copies of data in the vast majority of cases were actually the original copy, the initial backup, and then the archive backup. And the way that most businesses got 2 different media types, they considered their on-site disk as type 1, and then they considered an off-site tape repository as type 2. And that's how they met their 3-2-1 rule obligations. Today, we know a couple of things. First, we know that if I'm using the 3-2-1 rule and I use my traditional tape-based archive of the past, we know that it's going to be, first, really expensive. Second, we know that our ability to get access to the data will be significantly limited by the offsite tape repository. So, for example, things like instant VM recovery do not work with a tape-based repository. There's nothing instant about the recovery that you get from tape. In fact, we know that with tape, the first step in the recovery process is a phone call to the company to request the tapes, or an email to the company that does your offsite repository to request the tapes. There is nothing automated about the process. It's slow, it's unreliable, and it's ineffective. And so when we talk about opportunities with the 3-2-1 rule today, we start to think about the 3-2-1 rule in terms of what it might do in a hybrid cloud environment. Now imagine if I took the offsite archive and instead of putting it on tape, I put it to a disk in an offsite public cloud environment. Now my ability to recover changes dramatically. Now I can recover directly. My access is direct to the data. The only thing that I worry about is the speed of the line, the WAN link, connecting my private on-premises environment to my public data repository. I still get the different media, I still get the 3 different copies of data, and in fact, depending on who I work with, let's say I work with Microsoft Azure as the public cloud provider, I know that Microsoft Azure makes 3 duplicates, I guess triplicates, 3 copies of my data when I move it into Microsoft Azure. So I may have one on-premises copy, the production copy of the data. I may have the initial backup, which is also on-premises. That's number 2. I'm going to archive that data to Microsoft Azure, which comes 3, 4, and 5. Now I'm looking at a 5-to-1 rule instead of a 3-to-1. So I start to get additional resiliency built into my data in terms of number of copies, which is kind of cool. Now, the 3-to-1 rule is still a standard in our industry. Many businesses will extend it beyond 3-to-1. They might do multiple offsite copies. They might go something like a 5-to-2 or even a 5-3-2. The point here is that availability is not backup. We're no longer thinking about it in the same way. We're now starting to think about what are the challenges, how do we address them, and then how do we meet what the business requirements are in our environment so that we get the most out of our data. Remember, no downtime, no data loss. Those are the things that we really want to eliminate. So let's talk a little bit now about some other challenges. I'm going to focus in, and we'll throw some Veeam and Microsoft Azure info your way here. Why do I want a hybrid environment, and what kind of opportunities is it going to get for me? Well, when I start talking about Veeam and Microsoft Azure, or Veeam and any public cloud provider, the reason, frankly, that I focus on Azure is because Veeam has some great integration components already built for Microsoft Azure. Undoubtedly, we will build similar integration components for the other key providers that are out there, AWS, Azure, Google, etc. Today, those exist for Microsoft Azure. We simply began there first. So when you start talking Veeam and Microsoft Azure, one of the goals that all of our businesses have, and one of the challenges, frankly, is they want one consistent data protection policy across their private cloud and public cloud environments. They want to be able to use Veeam, for example, to build an on-premises backup and then archive that into Microsoft Azure. They want to be able to use their Veeam to protect the running workloads that they have in Azure or that they're running in Office 365. They want to be able to extend Veeam to all of their physical servers and to all of the client machines in their environment. They want to extend it across all of the virtual machines that are running in their environment. Everything that that business does, they want to be able to get that one consistent data protection policy and extend it across all of their hybrid options. It's really important to them. In addition, they want to be able to externalize backups for VMware, Hyper-V, their physical servers, and their workstations. They want to do that in a way that provides them with accessibility, speed, the best options for recovery, and frankly speaking, the way that they're going to get those things is through the use of a third-party cloud provider like Microsoft Azure. They can use public cloud archives and now have direct access to their data, use things like instant file level recovery, which they're used to on premises and can now also be run in Microsoft Azure. When we think about Veeam and Microsoft Azure, 2 other components that we should talk about. First, all of our customers, all of them, have a long-term data retention problem. And when I say a long-term data retention problem, it's a problem because they are subject to regulatory compliance requirements for data retention that say you have to keep your data for X number of time periods. And it might be months, it might be years, it might be decades, and it might be indefinitely. The point to all of this is that as our customers work with their data, I need to be able to have a way to retain that data long term that is effective at recovery and accessibility And the way that we're going to suggest that that happens is through leveraging public cloud. Last but not least, availability SLAs are really important. And frankly, today, if you're still running tape, you know the pain that I'm talking about here. Traditional tape-based archives just don't meet the SLAs that we would like. There's some interesting data out there. It says 85% of CIOs, yeah, that's right, tell us that their archive requirements don't meet the SLAs that they would like. Now, that doesn't mean they don't meet their SLAs. What's happening is that many of our customers will actually set their SLAs low simply because they know they can't really meet what they'd actually like. And that's really sort of sad. So when we start thinking about availability in a hybrid cloud environment, we really want to make sure that we consider a move to something like public cloud for a long-term archive so that I can actually set SLAs to a level that I'd like to actually have instead of one that I'm limited to because of the choice that I made with the archive. So I'm watching your audience view, and it doesn't look like my slide's updating there. Let me swing back and forth, see if I can get that to update. Don't know why that's the case. Maybe one of our moderators can give me a little bit of help here. Any ideas? Are you seeing updating slides, or am I the only one on my audience view that's not seeing them update?
No, you're still on the 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, that's 2 slides ahead on my screen. So let's see what we've got here. Let me do a quick stop sharing and start sharing again. Let's see if maybe it'll update. Sorry about that, guys. I hate when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, let me grab the presenter rights and hand it back to you and see if that resets it.
Okay. Look, we're getting an availability scenario in a software as a service environment. It's just like today's title, leveraging hybrid cloud to improve high availability with Veeam. Sorry, I can find the humor in all of those things.
All right, that's cool. Well, I passed it back to you. Let's see if you could get it going again.
All right, come on, baby.
Yeah, everyone on the call, thank you for your patience.
Waiting for next screen, huh?
You're up.
Hey, that's good. The question is, will it continue?
Hopefully it will.
I just tacked up to next slide here. Let's see what we get.
I'm seeing a next Azure and Veeam right now.
Yeah. She's slow to load today.
It transitioned.
There you go. Are you seeing my webinar pane there on the right side, or is that just me?
Your screen is full. It's clear. You're ready to go.
All right, let's keep going. My apologies, folks. I love technology, especially when it works well, right? So
Yes,
when we think about this concept of Veeam and backing up to an archive, let's take Microsoft Azure as our approach. We're going to work with both physical machines and virtual machines on premises. We're going to build an initial backup, and we're going to do that on premises. We do that because we know from experience our customers want rapid recovery, and the fastest recovery that they can get is going to come from their on-premises data repository. So most of our customers will do an initial backup with Veeam Backup and Replication or Veeam Availability Suite. They'll keep that data on premises, and they'll keep it for a short period of time. We'll call it an initial retention period. Usually it's somewhere between, say, 3 and 5 days. That's not too long, pretty quick. Some keep it a little bit longer. We'll call it the initial retention period. Generally, it's the interval between when they make a backup and when they make the next backup. So they'll keep that initial backup on premises for that initial retention period. Once that initial retention period passes, now we want to pass that data up to Microsoft Azure. And the way that we're going to get it there is through a traditional WAN link. Now, Veeam uses virtual machines in the Azure Marketplace. They're certified VMs that'll take you about 15, 20 minutes to have operational. We build connections between the on-premises or private cloud environment and the public cloud environment, and those connections can operate using a software-based WAN acceleration that will help you get your data up to Microsoft Azure somewhere around 10 times faster than what you would expect from a traditional WAN connection. So we've got some cool technology built in to help you move the data quickly. We could use blob storage. We could use blob storage in one of two types, blob or page blob. Customers could choose to put appliances in to that discussion.
Hey, Chris, your control panel is showing. Sorry to cut you off there.
I knew that was going to happen. How's that?
Better. Slightly showing. Yeah, top right corner. And it's back.
Just does not want to load right. All right, I'm going to go to a little minimal pain. Hopefully that doesn't bug you too bad.
Yeah, that should be better. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. When we use Microsoft Azure, the Azure repository is going to hold the data for us long term. We use something called grandfather, father, son retention policy, so we limit the amount of data that's up there in Azure and maximize our ability to recover everything while meeting our regulatory compliance requirements. Now, in the world of Veeam, I told you earlier that Veeam has created these really cool tools called the Veeam Explorers. And those tools allow us to get into and access data from databases that have been backed up, like Exchange, SharePoint, Active Directory. It also works with SQL Server and with Oracle. And with SQL and Oracle, we get the ability to do point-in-time backups, go in and play transaction logs down to individual transactions. With Oracle, browse and restore image-level backups for Oracle databases. The cool thing about the Veeam Explorer tools is that those Explorer tools don't just work on premises, they work with the archives in Microsoft Azure or other public cloud providers as well. The beauty here is that from a business perspective, a customer who has Veeam on premises and is working with Veeam in a public cloud environment now gets all of the same recovery capabilities that they've come to enjoy on premises in their hybrid cloud environment. Now, there is one caveat to that. There's no instant VM recovery in an off-site public cloud archive. We can do recovery to those off-site archives. There's something called Direct Restore for Microsoft Azure, for example, that allows that recovery to occur. But because that data is not on premises, and because you're going to have to provision an environment in Azure, it's not going to take 2 minutes. It's going to take a little longer. However, the capability is still there. Just be aware that when we start talking about instant VM recovery, that doesn't happen in the public cloud environment the same way that it happens on premises. Now, I had a request to focus in today and talk about a really cool technology called Veeam Backup for Office 365. And so I'm going to do that. I want to be clear with you when we talk about all of these technologies, when we discuss a business's need to use and leverage hybrid clouds, our goal with this is to look to what the present and the future are in the world of IT and take advantage of those opportunities. Now, one of the things that we've seen, we'll call it a swing in the pendulum of email, is the way that we work with data from an Exchange perspective. If we were to go back just 5 years ago, the vast majority of you would have Exchange running in your on-premises data centers, your on-premises networks. Over the course of that 5 years, we've watched a swing where now the vast majority of businesses don't run Exchange in their on-premises data center. Instead, they use Office 365. And there's lots of good reasons for that, cost, management, reliability, accessibility, all of those. But the reality is simple and straightforward. The 3-2-1 rule is still in existence. We still want 3 copies of our data. And at Veeam, we were approached by our customers who said, look, we've got availability built in for everything except for our Exchange environment. We would love for Veeam to back up Office 365. And for a while, we wondered if that was something that was really necessary. And after going back, reviewing availability requirements, we said, yeah, it's probably something we should do, and so we did. This last year, we released Veeam Backup for Office 365. This way, you can back up the email data from Office 365, from your user mailboxes, back that up, and put it much like you would do in a traditional on-premises environment. You can put a copy in Microsoft Azure, since that's where it's running already, or you can archive that data back to your on-premises environment. Now, instead of going from private cloud to public cloud, we're going from public cloud to private cloud. We're meeting the same requirements. We're meeting the same regulatory compliance issues. We're also providing some extra flexibility in terms of restore or recovery. Now, when you back up Office 365 email data, you back it up in the same format that Exchange uses natively. Now, that way, I can recover to either an on-premises location, meaning an Exchange server that I'm running on-premises, or back to Microsoft Office 365. The cool thing about that is not only do I get the capability to recover the entire mailbox, but of course, because of the cool Veeam Explorers, I can restore email, calendars, contacts, mailbox items. I can restore them directly to Office 365. I can restore them to an on-premises Exchange mailbox. We can save them as a file. We can save email as an attachment, export it as a PST file. You got all kinds of really cool options. Why do I want this? People ask me all the time, oh, I like the idea, but why do I want it? And the reason I want it is kind of twofold. First, it really protects us from ourselves. If your users are anything like mine, normally what happens is, well, I'll say this. If your users are anything like me, I'll go through my email box and I'll say, oh, there's an email from my manager and it has an attachment, but we've already taken care of that, so I'm going to delete it. There's another email from my manager and it's got an attachment related to the previous one that I just deleted, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then 32 days later, my manager's going to send me an email and say, hey, remember that thing we worked on? It was about a month ago. Can you go back, pull that up? I'd like to readdress some of those points and change them. At that point, I say, I deleted that 32 days ago, and Microsoft's default retention is only 30 days, and we didn't pay extra to retain anything any longer, so I'm kind of out of luck. Well, if I had a backup using Veeam Backup for Office 365, it's a piece of cake for me to say, hey, let's go to the backup from 32 days ago. It's in my archive. I want you to find those individual items. I want to return them back to my Office 365 mailbox, and everything continues to work. The other thing that's beautiful about this is that that recovery can occur just about as fast as my help desk person can click the buttons. So we use it for all kinds of good reasons. Now, there's another good reason behind having Veeam Backup for Office 365, and that is that there are workloads that customers continue to run today through on-premises Exchange because Office 365 doesn't necessarily meet their regulatory compliance requirements. E-discovery, journaling, for example, those kinds of things can easily be built and managed through email archives with Veeam Backup for Office 365. So lots of good reasons for the backup. Let me go in and let's give you a brief look at how that process would actually work. So the way that this is going to happen, customers are going to say, hey, I'd like to use Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. They're going to set that up with their traditional Veeam console in their virtual machine on premises, right? We're going to point that Veeam backup utility at their Office 365 mailboxes. This is going to be done on a per user basis. So we're going to back up the Office 365 mailbox. Now, as I build the backup, in this particular example, we're going to actually point that backup at a local backup repository. Now, once that local backup repository is in place, or has a backup of the Office 365 data in place, my ability to recover is bi-directional. I could go back to Office 365, or I could go to an on-premises Exchange server. Now, you'll notice that in this example, not only can I back up Office 365, but also because I have traditional Veeam availability suite, I can also back up my on-premises Exchange environment. So there is capability to run both if your business chooses to do so. I have flexible restore options, so I can back up to local repositories, I can back up to Office 365 or Azure repositories. My restore options include restore to Office 365, restore to on-premises Exchange. I can restore email as an attachment, just send it right back to myself or to anyone else for that matter, save it as a file, or export it to a PST. So really a lot of different options in terms of flexibility in recovery. What about email archives? Well, one of the things that our customers tell us is I need to be able to efficiently perform e-discovery of email archives. One of the nice things about having your archives in the same backup repository is that I can now use Veeam Explorer for Microsoft Exchange and perform very effective e-discovery on the backups in my archive. So a powerful set of tools that are available for you to use with Office 365. Now, I showed you in the previous example, and frankly, it looks the same here, a backup that's designed or architected for an on-premises data repository for backup. But you aren't stuck doing that. So you could back up to an on-premises data repository, but you could also back up to an Azure repository and have your recovery work equally as effectively in Microsoft Azure as it does from your on-premises environment. Everyone asks, how is it licensed and how is it priced? This is off the Veeam website. I pulled it down yesterday, so it is as current as yesterday afternoon. We do license Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 on a subscription basis, and it's done either 1 year or 3 year annual subscriptions. Those subscriptions, you can see them are done on a per user basis, and we'll go $2 a month per user for Office 365 backup. Minimum 10 purchase. You can also run a 3-year annual subscription, which saves you a fair amount of money. You can see the cost breakdowns. Now, there are obviously, this is the MSRP version of pricing and licensing. Remember, I told you at the beginning of the webcast, we do everything through our partners. We constantly run promotions with them, and so it is likely that they may have a promotion in place to do licensing and pricing better than what you see here on the screen. So please talk to your partner, work with them on licensing and pricing. They'll have great deals for you. There is one special promotion that we're supporting from a Veeam perspective, and it's this. If you're already a Veeam customer, you can go and register for an unlimited number of Veeam Backup for Office 365 licenses, and the first 6 months of those licenses are free. It's a nice reward for being an existing Veeam customer. If you're interested in learning about how to extend that Veeam environment into a public cloud with Office 365, this is a great way to do it. How do I sign up for the licenses, or register for the licenses? Go to the Veeam website. You can register there. So everyone asks, and I'm not watching the Q&A pane right now because I'm minimized, but I'm assuming some of you are thinking, hey, I want more from backup for Office 365. For example, we have service providers who say, gosh, I'd love to be able to back up the Office 365 mailboxes for my customers who I service in my service provider environment. There is a new version of Veeam Backup for Office 365. It's in its beta right now. If we want, you could participate, go out. If you're not a part of the Veeam Beta Testers program, you'll have to wait. But for those of you that are, new things that we're testing, scalability, so we can use multi-repository, multi-tenancy architecture so that those service providers can provide backup of Office 365 deployments with a single installation. Other things, automation possibilities around REST API, PowerShell, minimizing management overhead, improving recovery times, those kinds of things are what we're looking at from our new version 1.5 of Veeam Backup for Office 365. One thing I know about Veeam, and we're going to kind of go to a conclusion here, and then we'll take some question and answers from all of you. One thing I know about Veeam, we're just getting started in the hybrid cloud environment. We've built our business around protecting a customer's on-premises assets, providing availability for their physical machines and their virtual machines, whether they're clients, servers, and regardless of the workload that they run. We're just getting started in innovative solutions for the hybrid cloud environment. So what you're seeing from us today, we will continue to innovate. So if you're looking for additional functionality, for example, some of you are probably asking yourselves, hey, I love this idea of backing up the Exchange component or the email component of Office 365. I wonder if Veeam's going to do anything with the SharePoint component or the OneDrive component of Office 365. And the answer is, of course we are. We just haven't done it yet. So keep your eyes on the future. We'll continue to innovate around what happens with public and private cloud environments, and those innovations will extend, like we said at the top of this session, to several key public cloud providers, to our software as a service applications, out to our service providers who are running managed services in cloud-style operations, and of course, we'll continue to innovate in our on-premises environment. Now, I'm going to throw one more slide up here, kind of a broader look at everything that we've talked about today. We frankly could probably run a whole series of webcasts talking about data protection and hybrid clouds and the different options and opportunities that are out there. These are ones that we've talked about today. We've talked about backing up on-premises data centers. We've talked very little about remote office, branch office possibilities. We've focused heavily on Veeam Backup for Office 365. We've talked about operations for archives in Microsoft Azure, a little bit about the Azure Marketplace, Veeam's direct restore to Microsoft Azure. What I hope you see is that our focus from Veeam is not only in the on-premises environment, but clearly on the hybrid cloud environment as you move ahead in the future. We see the benefits that this offers to your business. Hopefully, you see those benefits too. With that, let's go ahead and I'm going to open things up for question and answers. I'll pull up the Q&A pane here if I can find it, and we'll take some Q&A today. Sound good?
Sounds great. If you want, I could read them out to you.
Jorge, let's go for read them out. I like that.
Alrighty. The first question I got is, can I back up? Oh, sorry about that. Hold on a second.
That's okay.
There we go. Can I back up to a private cloud object storage on Scality or EMC ECS, for example?
Read that for me one more time. I want to make sure that I'm answering the right question.
Okay, it says, can I back up to a private cloud object storage on Scality or EMC ECS, for example?
It's a good question, and I believe the answer is yes, but I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking. So it sounds like
there
the question is,
more to
take
it.
what I have in my private environment and drop it onto an EMC environment. And that is absolutely the case. We have great built-in capability, great built-in integrations with EMC today. Most of our customers, when they're talking about working with providers like an EMC, an HP, Nimble, etc., usually those locations are off-site, and they're either offered by a service provider or they're actually owned by the business itself, and they're simply moving it to an off-site location. And Veeam does very, very well at that. In fact, many of our customers will use that to do replication and archive to those devices. So that's a really good question.
All right, and I think there was something attached to it. I think they were asking also on the same question, that is whether for open on-premises or public cloud services.
So in an on-premises environment, obviously object storage does very, very well from Veeam. We're still kind of doing some innovation around object storage in a public cloud environment, and we're doing it for a couple of different reasons. There are a lot of companies out there who say, oh yeah, we support object level storage in Microsoft Azure. And what we come to find out is they support it, but it doesn't really work that well and it costs a ton of money. So our capability supported is probably there. However, we don't announce it as publicly supported simply because we'd like to see it be much better, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to offer a solution to a customer that costs them more money than the existing solution that they have. And so when you start talking about object level storage in public cloud environments, today the public statement from Veeam is that's not supported. We'll continue to innovate it, get it to where we like it, and then we'll support it in a way that our customers love.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's another one. Is there pricing for nonprofits?
Is there pricing for nonprofits? There is. Work with your partner. They'll be able to give you pricing direct for nonprofits. When you talk pricing for Veeam, our pricing is going to be structured different based on the products that you're interested in. So Veeam Availability Suite will obviously have different pricing structure than the subscription-based units out of Veeam Backup for Office 365, for example. But best recommendation, work with your partner. Have them work with their Veeam representative. We'll get you the best pricing available for you.
All right, thank you. And what would be the pricing for the V9?
What is the pricing for V9? That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go to the website just like you will and look it up.
Okay.
I spend all my time talking about the technical stuff, not the pricing stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
all right.
another one, and I'll drop on and look it up.
All right, thank you. Here's another one. Can I back up from OS level to OS level if I don't have control to the VM level?
That's a good question. So when we start talking about backing up operating systems, we can back up operating systems, and the backups can go to repositories wherever we choose. So I'm assuming, and I hope this is correct, I'm listening to the question hoping this is what you're asking. I'm assuming this scenario is we have an individual who's wanting to back up an operating system from one virtual machine, store it in an archive in another environment, and then recover it in that environment without actually owning the underlying virtual machines. And there's going to be some permissions issues there, but it is possible to actually do the backup without controlling the underlying VM. One of the things that Veeam has done consistently is give our customers the capability to segment permissions, even for something as simple as like recovery, for example. Segment the permissions out, but still get the appropriate level of permissions to accomplish a task. So yes, it is possible to back up a operating system and archive it without actually owning permissions to the underlying VM. So a really, really good question.
All right, Chris, I believe that was the last one. I'll leave it open for the panel or anyone else for their input.
Awesome.
All right, if that's it, thank you very much. Many thanks to our speaker, Chris Henley, and thank you all for joining us today. Be sure to check out www.pcm.com/webinars for on-demand recordings and for our upcoming webinar schedule. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you again for future webinars. Have a great day.